This is a story about how I planted my placenta in my backyard. So I knew the entire time I was pregnant that I was going to plant my placenta. I did very briefly think about encapsulating my placenta, like drying it out and making it into pills, but then when I looked up how much it cost, I went, not doing that. In my heart of hearts, I am a cheapskate, which meant I was going to do it by myself. So that meant starting off with a trip to Bunnings, aka Hammer Barn, which is the Home Depot of Australia, basically. And I went there to go get a plant and a pot. I decided that I was going to use a plant I already had at home for the main plant to bury the placenta under, but I wanted a little companion plant to grow with it to kind of represent this baby. And we actually spent a surprising amount of time looking at pots. My partner really wanted a very expensive pot, and I just couldn't wrap my head around spending more than like $30 on a pot, even though I did in the end. If you're wondering why I picked the pot that I finally did, it's because it reminded me of the honey pots in Winnie the Pooh, and Winnie the Pooh is very close to my heart. Like, I am obsessed with it. I even themed my baby shower after it. Like, tell me this wouldn't make the cutest honey pot. And by the time we found this pot, we had looked at so many pots, so I was just glad to have it over with, even though my partner wanted to keep talking about pots.
The rim around that one is so dodgy. Look, it's all wonky.
Clearly, we're so old that this is riveting conversation to us all. I feel bad for my kid brother who was with us because he had to listen to both of us decide over pots for probably like 45 minutes. Once we selected a pot, the next part of this was picking a companion plant. Like I said before, we had already decided that we're going to use a plant at home as our main plant, and the plant at home is actually my miscarriage plant my partner bought me when we lost our previous baby. And the type of plant that it is a lemon tree, and it has seen better days. And a quick Google led us to the information that a basil plant would be the best companion plant for a lemon tree. And more information showed us that the basil plant actually grows really well on top of a placenta. So if you're looking for like a romantic or spiritual reason for why we chose a basil plant, there isn't one. We just chose it as a science. There's my brother skating his way through Hammer Barn. I know it's a sort of cliche, but everyone in my family actually really likes coming to the garden center. Like for my family, this would be a family outing, like a family field trip would be going to Bunnings. And honestly, it was really special to have my brother with us as we did this. He's such a good kid, even though he drives me crazy. We already had soil at home, so all that was left was to actually get the placenta from the baby. And that's what we did the very next day, was have a baby. By the way, my baby was 10 pounds, so I give myself a gold star for carrying all of that. Also, my C-section was so smooth and easy, I would easily have 10 of those. Now, if you didn't know, I'm actually partially disabled, so it took me quite a while to get back on my feet after my C-section, though. So normally you'd plant it maybe the day after or 2 days after, but it took me a week to get here. I did most of the first part by myself, so like putting the soil in, moving the pot, and putting the placenta in. And if you're wondering, here at the hospitals in Australia, you can request to keep your placenta, and they will seal and package it for you, so you're never touching it and the raw form. It's really common in the Maori community, which I'm not part of, but my neighbor is, to keep your placenta in your freezer for years. Like my neighbor kept hers in her freezer for like 6 years almost. She actually only recently buried it last year when she got to go back to New Zealand, and they actually transported it on the plane back to New Zealand. Thankfully, I did not have to take mine on a plane anywhere, so it was only in my fridge for 5 days, and my mom was complaining that it was taking up all the fridge space. It was so funny. So here is us burying my placenta as a family. I got my brother to help me because I was really weak, and then my partner did some of the heavy lifting as well. The soil that we're using is actually what I use to grow tomatoes. And it's really sweet because my motherhood journey is quite complicated, and this miscarriage lemon tree obviously represents one of my children, and the basil represents another, as well as my backyard representing a whole other thing as well. So for me, it's almost like all of my children and all of my motherhood journey is here in one place in this plant. There's my baby daddy with our fresh little baby in hand, helping me put the soil in on top. Once he helped me pour all that soil in, the last thing to do was put the basil plant in. By the way, the branch on this basil plant was already broken when we purchased it because my brother was like skating around in the Bunnings parking lot, and then he ended up breaking the plant because he knocked it over. But don't you worry, I can guarantee you that this plant is super healthy and vibrant. I'm going to show you guys at the end what it looks like now. But before I show you that, this is just me using the remnants of what was in the bucket of the placenta to water the plants and give it extra nutrients. This is the plant right now. It is super healthy and happy again, like there's new leaves on the lemon tree, and the basil plant is pretty much exploding everywhere. The placenta was absolutely packed full of iron and nutrients, so it's just making a really healthy plant. Anyway, I hope you're enjoying my return to long form content. All of my socials are in my description box. There's so much more to come, so I hope you're following.